So, you want to own a super yacht, but not quite the way you think. You've seen the version where a boat like this simply sits there, crew in pressed white uniforms waiting for you to show up twice a year. What almost nobody talks about is the other version, the one where your $100 million yacht spends most of its calendar working for a living, with strangers paying to sleep in your master suite while you're not using it. Here's the number that starts this whole conversation. Owning a super yacht costs roughly 10 to 15% of its purchase price every single year, just to keep it running. On a $50 million yacht, that's $5 to $7.5 million a year, before you've taken it anywhere. Crew salaries, fuel, insurance, berthing fees, and maintenance don't pause because the yacht is parked. They run whether you set foot on board once a year or 50 times. That single fact is why most super yacht owners who aren't in the very top sliver of global wealth do the same thing. They charter their own yacht out to strangers to help pay for it. Here's how it actually works. During peak season, the Mediterranean in summer, the Caribbean in winter, a well-positioned 50-meter yacht can charter for somewhere between 200,000 and 400,000 euros a week. Run that yacht for even 6 to 8 charter weeks a year, and you can be looking at well over €1 million in gross charter revenue, money that goes directly against those $5 to $7 million in fixed annual costs. But chartering out your yacht is not the same as renting out a spare room. To legally charter a yacht to paying guests, it has to be certified to commercial standards, inspections, safety equipment, crew licensing requirements that go well beyond what's needed for private use. That certification alone can take months and cost real money before a single guest ever books a week. Then there's the part owners consistently underestimate. A charter guest does not treat your yacht the way you do. Charter weeks mean constant turnover, unfamiliar guests, harder use on interiors, tenders, water sports equipment, and systems that were designed for a family's careful use, not a rotating cast of strangers on vacation. Insurance for commercial charter use costs more than private use insurance, refits come around faster, and the wear accumulates in a way that a purely private yacht simply doesn't experience. And here's the trade-off nobody puts in the brochure. Every week your yacht is out on charter is a week you can't use it yourself. The exact weeks that generate the most charter revenue, the height of the Mediterranean summer, the best weather windows in the Caribbean, are also the exact weeks you'd most want to be on board. Chartering out a super yacht doesn't just offset costs. It quietly hands your own vacation calendar over to whoever's willing to pay for it. Then there's a management layer most first-time owners don't see coming. Almost nobody runs their own charter bookings. Yacht charter management companies handle marketing, bookings, and guest relations, and they take a meaningful cut of gross charter revenue for doing it, on top of broker commissions charged to close individual bookings. By the time a 6-figure charter week gets divided between broker commission, management fees, crew bonuses, fuel, and provisioning for the guests, what actually lands back with the owner is a fraction of the headline number advertised on the yacht's charter listing. So the real trap isn't that chartering doesn't work. It's that owners walk in expecting it to functionally pay for the yacht, when in most cases, it only meaningfully offsets it, and offsetting $5 to $7 million a year in fixed costs, down to something more manageable, still leaves a very expensive hobby. Now, here's what happens when ownership itself goes wrong, not just the economics of running the boat. In 2022, several of the world's most expensive super yachts were seized within months of each other. Vessels like the Amadea, detained in Fiji, and the Dilbar, held in a Hamburg shipyard, after being linked to sanctioned Russian owners. These were yachts wrapped in exactly the kind of complex ownership structure the industry recommends for privacy. Shell companies, flag of convenience registrations, layers of holding entities designed so the true owner's name appeared nowhere on the paperwork. None of that structure protected the asset when the geopolitical ground shifted. The very same privacy tools built to shield an owner's identity became irrelevant the moment governments decided to trace beneficial ownership, regardless of how many shell companies stood in the way. A vessel that cost hundreds of millions of dollars to build and tens of millions a year to maintain sat, frozen in a shipyard, generating zero income and continuing to accumulate costs, with no owner able to touch it. It's an extreme example, but it points at something true for every superyacht owner, not just sanctioned billionaires. The ownership structure you build around an asset, this valuable, matters as much as the asset itself. Complexity built for privacy or tax efficiency can just as easily become the thing that traps your money in place when circumstances change. Compare that to how professionally run charter operations actually treat this business. Instead of owning a single aging yacht and hoping charter income keeps up with rising maintenance costs as the vessel gets older, the smartest operators work with professional yacht management companies from day one, keep their fleets relatively young, because charter guests overwhelmingly book newer, better-equipped yachts and treat maintenance and refits as scheduled, budgeted business expenses rather than emergencies. They negotiate management and broker fees up front, instead of discovering them after their first charter season. And they build their own usage calendar around charter demand, rather than fighting it season after season. Run that way, chartering stops being a desperate offset and starts functioning like an actual business, with a real, if thin, margin. So let's run the numbers the way a serious owner has to. The good scenario: a 50-meter yacht valued at $50 million, running roughly $6 million a year in fixed costs. It's newer, well-maintained, and marketed by an experienced charter management company. It books 10 strong weeks a season at an average of €250,000 a week. Call it €2.5 million, or roughly $2.7 million, in gross charter revenue. After broker commissions, management fees, and the extra wear and tear maintenance charter use requires, the owner nets back somewhere around a third to half of that gross figure against their running costs. It doesn't make the yacht profitable. It turns a $6 million annual hole into something closer to $4 million. Real savings, but still an extremely expensive asset. The bad scenario: an older yacht that charter guests increasingly pass over for newer tonnage, sitting mostly empty through peak season, while fixed costs keep accruing regardless. A major system failure forces an unplanned refit costing millions, right in the middle of what should have been the yacht's best earning weeks. And if ownership was ever structured through the kind of opaque holding company the industry once recommended purely for privacy, any legal, tax, or geopolitical complication can freeze access to the asset entirely, turning a merely expensive yacht into a liability sitting in a marina, earning nothing, costing everything. That's the entire business condensed into one sentence. Chartering out your own superyacht was never a way to make the boat pay for itself. It's a way to make an impossibly expensive hobby slightly less impossible. And the moment the ownership structure, the maintenance schedule, or the charter calendar gets away from you, the yacht stops being an asset and starts being exactly what it always quietly was: a hole in the water that you pour money into, shaped like a status symbol.